June 9th, 1944. 4:12 a.m. near Vimont, Normandy. A cold mist hugs the hedgerows as Field Marshal Erwin Rommel steps out of his staff car, the door thudding shut like a muffled gunshot. Dawn is only a pale bruise on the horizon. The air smells of damp earth, exhaust fumes, fear. Somewhere beyond the tree line, Allied naval guns growl distant, rolling thunder that never stops. It feels like the ground itself is trembling. Rommel tightens his greatcoat and walks toward a camouflaged command post carved into a half-collapsed barn. Shadows move inside, officers hunched over maps, illuminated by a dim lantern. No one looks up. They all hear the same thing he does, the steady rumble of Allied armor massing on the beaches they were supposed to throw back into the sea. A courier hands him a teleprinter strip, still warm from the machine. Rommel reads it once, jaw muscle twitching. The second time, slower. It's the same answer he's received for 3 days in a row. Berlin promises reinforcements. Berlin promises fuel. Berlin promises everything and delivers nothing. He slams the paper on the table. "We are fighting blind," he mutters. Blind. And on foot, you can almost feel the tension radiating off the officers. They know what he knows. The Panzers meant to counterattack the Allies are scattered inland, mobile, sitting like steel monuments to a strategy that's already collapsing. Rommel points to a red cluster drawn near Cannes. Panzer reports 5 operational tanks. 5. The rest, he catches himself, breath sharp. The rest can't move. They have no fuel. An adjutant nods grimly. Tiger crews are siphoning from motorcycles now, Herr Feldmarschall. Another adds. We've begun rationing to the point where Rommel raises a hand. Enough. A long silence hangs in the barn. Outside, the low drone of Allied bombers begins to build, first a hum, then a roar. Dust trickles from the rafters as they pass overhead. Rommel finally speaks, voice tight but controlled. "Prepare the message to Hitler. Use my words exactly. Further delay is impossible. Allied armor is breaking through." His staff writes in frantic shorthand as the bombers fade into the distance. This message, this please, one of several he's sent since D-Day. And every day he hopes for a different outcome. Every day he's disappointed. Rommel steps outside again, boots crunching on gravel. The wind bites harder now, carrying a faint, acrid smell. Burning fuel dumps hit during the night. He looks toward the west. Toward the beaches he had warned would be the decisive battlefield. He was right. And now, the price is being paid in blood. A radio operator rushes out behind him, headset around his neck. "Sir, reports from Panzergruppe West. Another Tiger battalion is abandoning vehicles. They say they have," he hesitates. "How much fuel?" Rommel demands. The soldier swallows. "Enough for 2 kilometers. 2 kilometers. For a machine built to dominate battlefields. For crews who trained for years." Rommel looks north, eyes narrowing. In the distance, muffled booms mark another Allied push inland. The front is moving like a tide, swallowing towns, crossroads, entire divisions. And his own armored fist, once feared across Europe, is now little more than a rusting statue trapped in place. He thinks of Berlin again. Of Hitler's voice over the telephone the previous evening, rambling about miracle weapons, retaliation rockets, inevitable victory. Rommel had tried to cut in, to speak plainly, to warn him, but the Führer no longer listens. Not to logistics, not to reality, not even to Rommel. Fuel shipments would be redirected. Not to Normandy, not to the Panzers, to the V2 rocket program. The pet obsession he believed would turn the war. Rommel had stood in stunned silence, unable to believe what he was hearing. And now, on this cold Normandy morning, the consequences are everywhere. A staff car screeches into the courtyard. General Gervon Schweppenberg steps out, face gray with exhaustion. "Erwin," he says, with no formality, "the Allies have broken through near Tilly-sur-Seulles. If we don't move the Panzers now..." Rommel cuts him off, voice low but burning. Ger's shoulders sag. For a long moment, the two men just stand there, surrounded by the rising noise of the war closing in around them. Finally, Rommel steps closer. "We must force Berlin to face the truth," he whispers. "If not, the Western Front will collapse in weeks." Ger nods slowly. Rommel turns back toward the command post. His message to Hitler is being transmitted now, crackling through the wires. racing across hundreds of miles toward someone who may never read it, or worse, may simply ignore it again. But as the teleprinter clatters one final line, a young signalman looks up with a pale, uncertain expression. Field Marshal. Something's coming back from Berlin. Rommel steps forward, heart pounding, not with hope, but with dread. The teleprinter sputters, hesitates, and then begins striking its metal keys in a steady, mechanical rhythm like distant artillery-made miniature. Dot-upped, every head in the command post turns toward it. Even the war outside seems too quiet, just for a heartbeat, as if Normandy itself is listening. Rommel steps closer, boots echoing across the cement floor. A single strip of paper curls from the machine, inching forward with agonizing slowness. The young signalman tears it free and hands it over with trembling fingers. Rommel's eyes scan the first line. He didn't expect gratitude. He didn't expect urgency. Something. Dead, he reads a monotone dismissal, typical of the Führer's adjutants, who speak in his name with machine-like loyalty. The Führer has noted the situation. The Panzer divisions must hold their positions. Further fuel allocations cannot be authorized at this time. That's it. No plan, no reinforcements, no lifeline. Just an instruction hold. As if Tiger tank crews could push 45-ton machines across France with their bare hands. For a moment, no one moves, no one breathes. Then Rommel exhales through his nose, slow and sharp, and folds the paper in half with surgical precision. He doesn't slam it down. He doesn't shout. The silence that follows is far more terrifying, because every man in that room knows what the message truly means. Berlin has abandoned them. Distant rumble shakes the Barnelite artillery walking its way inland, searching for German strongpoints. Dust swirls around Rommel's boots like smoke at a funeral pyre. General Gehr von Schweppenberg steps forward. Erwin. Please tell me he didn't deny the request. Rommel hands him the message without a word. Gore reads it once, jaw slack, then lets his hand fall to his side, the paper fluttering like a dying leaf. He wants us to hold. With what? No one answers. An intelligence officer clears his throat. Reports from the 2nd Panzer Division indicate they've dismantled 2 supply trucks to siphon their last fuel reserves. The mechanics say they can maybe get a single battalion moving, maybe. Rommel's response is little more than a whisper. Hitler is living in another world. He walks toward a map, pinned to the wall. Thick blue aerosol advances are pushing inland from the beaches. Every hour, they grow longer, bolder, more confident. German counterattacks, marked in black, are tiny scratches in comparison, most of them ending with a simple note, immobilized. Rommel draws a finger along one route where the British are advancing toward Cannes. He stops at a crossroads marked with an iron cross, the symbol his staff now uses for units that can no longer move. Yesterday, he says, this was a full battalion of Panthers. Today, they are roadside bunkers without engines. And tomorrow, Kerr asks. Rommel doesn't turn to face him. Tomorrow, they are wrecks, or trophies. A crackle from the radio interrupts. The voice on the other end is frantic, drowned out by engine noise and the pop of small arms fire. Panzer Lehr 2 Army Group BR northern flank is folding. We cannot redeploy. We have the transmission cuts. They all know the missing word. No fuel. Rommel completes quietly. The operators glance at each other, unsure what to do. But Rommel's mind is elsewhere, back in Berlin, in those suffocating briefings where he begged Hitler to face reality. He remembers standing beside the Führer's massive map table, the smell of stale smoke thick in the air. As Hitler waved dismissively at the Atlantic Wall, the Allies will be crushed at the water's edge, he had declared. Maul had tried again and again to warn him. The enemy's air power is absolute, he'd said. Our movements will be seen instantly. We must keep panzers close to the beaches, and above all, we must have fuel for immediate counterattack. Hitler refused every point. Now the Allied fighter bombers, those jabots the German troops feared like flying guillotines, own the skies. Any German tank that does manage to move does so under a rain of rockets and cannon fire. Even thinking about relocating a division feels like suicide. Rommel rubs his temples, exhaustion creeping in at the edges of his vision. Outside, a military truck sputters weakly before its engine dies with a hollow cough. He hears the driver shouting, "That was the last of it. She's empty," followed by the metallic slam of a fist on the hood. Inside the barn, the atmosphere is changed. There's a heaviness, now a grim understanding settling over every man present. They aren't just short on fuel, they are out of time. Junior officer approaches cautiously. Herr Feldmarschall. If Berlin refuses to act, what do we do? Rommel lifts his head slowly. His eyes look older than they did an hour ago. We adapt, he says. We shorten the lines. We fight defensively. And we pray the Allies make a mistake. And if they don't, the officer asks. Rommel's gaze drifts toward the west again, where the sky pulses faintly with the glow of distant explosions. His voice barely reaches a whisper, then the western front collapses entirely. A boom shakes the ground closer this time. A shell whistles overhead and detonates behind the nearby tree line. The officers flinch. Outside, a runner sprints toward the barn, waving frantically. "Sir, you need to see this. It's the road to Knitz. It's filled with abandoned tigers." Rommel freezes. Abandoned? Already? The runner nods, panting. They ran out of fuel during the night. Crews left them where they stopped. Rommel's fists clench, knuckles whitening. He strides out of the barn without another word. Behind him, Jer mutters, "God help us all." But there is something Rommel doesn't yet know. Something happening hundreds of miles away. Deep inside Hitler's headquarters that will seal the fate of Normandy before the month is out. Because the Führer isn't just ignoring fuel requests. He's making a decision that will cripple the German army even further. A decision Rommel will learn about in the most devastating way. July 2nd, 1944. 1847. Wolfschanz, Hitler's eastern headquarters. Cicadas hum in the humid East Prussian air, but inside the concrete bunker the atmosphere is dead still, thick with cigarette smoke and the stale odor of damp uniforms. Officers stand along the walls, silent, rigid, afraid. General Alfred Jodl clears his throat. Main Führer, Army Group B, urgently requests immediate fuel allocations for mobile defense in Normandy. Their panzers are immobilized Panzer Lehr, 2nd Panzer, 12th SS. Hitler raises a hand, palm outward. Enough. Keitel, Jodl, and the others share a quick glance. Slowly, Hitler walks around the table, tapping the tip of a pencil against his palm. "We have already diverted too much to the west," he mutters. "We must conserve our resources for decisive weapons." "Sir, with respect, without fuel, there are no decisive weapons. The panzer divisions cannot move. That is because they've wasted fuel on pointless withdrawals." Hitler leans over the map and jabs a finger at a series of thick red arrows originating from launch sites in the Low Countries. Main Führer, the V2 program consumes enormous fuel requirements. Liquid oxygen alone, Hitler slams both hands on the table. England must be punished. London must burn. The V2 will force them to negotiate. Only the distant hum of generators fills the bunker. What none of the officers dare say is that the V2, though terrifying, is strategically useless. It cannot win the war. It cannot stop the Allied armies that now pour through the French countryside like a rising tide. Still, Hitler continues. All shipments from Ploiesti in Hungary will be directed there. Jodl stiffens. All shipments. He moves his finger toward Normandy, where the map shows blue arrows erupting from the beaches. Rommel exaggerates the danger. The Allies are overextended. A single well-timed counterattack will paralyze them. Jodl tries one last time. Every tank that cannot move will serve as a fortress. Every crew will fight where they stand. Not one machine is to be withdrawn. The fluorescent light flickers above them, humming like an insect trapped in a jar. Keitel and Jodl exchange a terrified look. A Führer who destroys generals is one thing. Führer who ignores the war entirely is another. But the decision is made. Fuel precious, life-giving fuelless, now diverted to the V2 rocket program. Not to the tanks fighting at Cannes, not to the armored divisions ordered to defend France, not to the crumbling Western Front. But he will feel its consequences in every broken engine, every abandoned Tiger, every frantic report of Allied armor sweeping across the countryside unchecked. Later that night, Normandy. A convoy of German trucks crawls down a narrow forest road under moonlight. They carry the last jerrycans scrounged from depots bombed days earlier. Drivers whisper to each other between shifts of double-clutching gears. Every kilometer feels stolen. Suddenly, the lead truck sputters, then coughs, then dies. The driver coasts it to a stop and slams his fists on the wheel. Verdammt, that was the last can. The men step out, staring into the dark trees, listening for Allied aircraft. The rest of the convoy halts, engines rumbling low. A lieutenant walks the line, face tight with anger and helplessness. How far were we supposed to get? A sergeant asks bitterly. To Cannes, the lieutenant replies. Someone laughs, short, humorless. We won't even reach the next village. The lieutenant doesn't argue. He knows the truth. This convoy will never reach the front. Panzers waiting for these jerrycans will remain motionless until the Allies overrun them. And the worst part, Berlin will never send more. July 3rd, 9:20, Army Group B headquarters. Rommel listens to the logistic report without moving. Vein pulses in his temple. No fuel convoys arrived last night, the officer concludes. Within 72 hours, most remaining tanks will be immobile. Rommel sits very still, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles whiten. Then softly, send another message to Hitler. The officer hesitates. Field Marshal, after yesterday's reply, Rommel's gaze hardens, knit. He stands, every movement careful, controlled. If Berlin refuses to save the Western Front, then the Western Front is already lost. A hush falls over the room. Outside, the rumble of Allied guns grows steadily louder, the sound of a front line moving, unstoppably, toward them. Rommel turns toward the door, prepared the staff car, visiting the Cannes sector. He steps outside into the sunlight, and freezes. A long line of Tiger and Panther tanks stretches along the field road, hulking shapes under camouflage nets. Their crews sit beside them in the grass, smoking, eating, staring blankly into the distance. Not a single engine is running. Rommel walks down the line. Each tank is identical in one detail. The crews have painted a white symbol on the front glacis plate. A staff captain approaches him quietly. They ran dry at dawn. Herr Feldmarschall. Rommel nods, expression grim. Behind him, Allied fighter bombers roar in the distance, their engines growing louder every second. Rommel doesn't turn. He already knows what that sound means. These tanks cannot run. They cannot retreat. They cannot fight. They are sitting targets. He closes his eyes. The decision made in that bunker far away, the decision to starve Normandy for the sake of rockets, because the Allied armor is moving again. And this time, nothing stands in its path. July 10th, 1944. 6:32 a.m., the Villiers-Bocage Road, Normandy. Morning fog clings low across the rolling fields, coating everything in a silver sheen. The hedgerows, those ancient earthen walls that have broken so many Allied offensives, now stand silent. The only witnesses to the sight unfolding along the rutted dirt road. A Tiger tank, its armor scarred by shrapnel. Its one smitey engine dead sits angled in a ditch where it rolled to a stop 2 days earlier. A crewman crouches beside it, tapping a wrench against the metal track in pointless frustration. Another sits on the turret, smoking in utter silence. They look less like the men of Germany's once legendary Panzer arm and more like statues abandoned by time. General Heinrich Eberbach, newly assigned to stabilize Panzer Group West, steps from his vehicle and stares at the immobilized beast. A captain approaches and salutes, then gestures down the road. It isn't just this one, sir. The entire line is like this. Eberbach follows his gaze. Stretching toward the horizon, embedded in the mist like a column of metallic fossils, are dozens of tanks, Panthers, Mark IVs, Tigers, all motionless. Their hulls glitter faintly with dew. The crews stand beside them, waiting for orders that will never come. Rommel arrives minutes later, stepping out of his Kubelwagen with a cold determination. His boots crunch on gravel as he walks, taking in each dead machine with a gaze that grows darker with every step. A tanker approaches him, helmet under his arm. He's young, too young, Herr Feldmarschall. We siphoned everything we could find. Trucks, staff, cars, even motorcycles. But it wasn't enough. Rommel touches the man's shoulder gently. You did what you could, soldier. The tanker nods, but the shame is written across his face. These men weren't defeated, they were starved. Rommel turns to Eberbach. Any word from Berlin? Eberbach hesitates, a dangerous pause. No. And sir, I fear the reason. Rommel's jaw tightens. Eberbach continues, voice low. A contact in OKW says the Führer is redirecting more fuel to the V2 program, even now. Rommel looks at him sharply, as if confirming a nightmare he already believed. His voice is steady, but each word carries the weight of a collapsing front. He would rather fire rockets at London than stop the armies invading France. A nearby boom echoes across the countryside, Allied artillery. Closer now, the ground trembles. Then another sound rises, distant but unmistakably an aggressive mechanical growl from beyond the tree line. Crews lift their heads. Sergeant grabs binoculars and peers across the foggy fields. Engines, multiple, approaching fast. Rommel snatches the binoculars and focuses on a distant ridge. Outlines begin to take shape through the mist. Squat armored hulls, turrets swinging like hunting animals. Shermans, dozens of them. American stars like bright white wounds on their armor. Rommel lowers the binoculars. They've found us. The tanker's voice cracks. But we can't move, sir. Rommel turns to the cruise line in the roadside. Not one tank engine rumbles to life. No tracks clank. No guns rotate, he realizes, with a sharp twist in his stomach. That this is the nightmare scenario he had predicted for months. Panzers trapped, unable to maneuver, sitting ducks for Allied combined arms. Get the men into cover, Rommel orders immediately. Abandon vehicles, prepare for infantry defense. But the Tigers a lieutenant begins. Will not save us today, Rommel snaps, and softer, not without fuel, as the crews scatter into the hedgerows. The first American shells whistle overhead and detonate with brutal force. Earth erupts. Shrapnel sings through the air like metal hail. A Panther tank takes a direct hit. Its cupola bursts open in a fireball. Men dive for the ditches, smoke curling skyward like a funeral pyre. Rommel shields his face as dirt rains down. The roar of American engines grows louder. Sherman after Sherman advancing, confident, unstoppable. Their movements are fluid, their strategy clear. Sweep the stationary German armor aside like broken toys. Machine gun fire ripples across the fields. Mortar, boom. Explosions flicker like lightning. Eberbach grabs Rommel's arm. He must fall back. Rommel doesn't argue. He points toward a stone farmhouse offering temporary shelter. They sprint across the open ground, bullets snapping past them. Inside, Rommel leans against a timber's beam, catching his breath. His officers cluster around him, faces pale, uniforms dusted with earth. No counterattack, Eberbach mutters. No maneuver. No armored reserve, nothing. Rommel's eyes burn not with panic but with fury. And Berlin will blame us, he says. We'll call it incompetence, cowardice, anything but the truth. Outside, the American column has reached the road. Shermans roll past the abandoned Tigers, their commanders looking over the hulking machines with a mix of awe and caution. Giants slain not by combat, but by logistics. One Sherman radios in, German heavies intact, no movement. Looks like they died of thirst. Rommel hears this from the farmhouse window through a captured Allied transmitter still on frequency. The phrase cuts deep, died of thirst. Not from battle, not from bravery or lack thereof, but from fuel yet again, the lifeblood of modern war. German infantry retreat through the fields now, scattered, leaderless. Without armored support, the line ruptures like paper. The Allies pour through. Rommel watches a Tiger crew run from their tank before another Allied shell slams into it, igniting the fuel vapors inside. Flames roar from the turret hatch. The war is slipping away. Eberbach lowers his binoculars. If they break through here, Patton's Third Army will be unleashed. Rommel closes his eyes. He doesn't need to imagine it. He sees it clearly. American armor racing across the plains of France, sweeping aside scattered German battle groups, capturing fuel dumps, cities, bridges, a chain reaction of collapse. Weeks not, months before the entire Western Front disintegrates. Rommel finally speaks, voice quiet but carved from iron. Hitler has condemned France, and with it Germany. A runner bursts through the farmhouse door, breathless. Field Marshal. New orders from Berlin. Rommel takes the paper, reads it. His face goes cold. Hold all positions. No withdrawal permitted. Eberbach stares in disbelief. He wants us to hold against tanks we cannot fight. Rommel folds the paper slowly. This is no longer strategy, he says. This is delusion. Outside, another massive blast rattles the farmhouse. American armor is pushing forward again. And as the roof trembles, Rommel knows what must come next. July 15th, 1944, 5:58 a.m., near Ivranches, Normandy. The dawn is pale, the sky bruised with streaks of cloud, and the scent of churned earth and diesel hangs in the air. Patton's Third Army has reached the open fields west of the Cotentin Peninsula, moving fast, unstoppable. You can almost feel the panic in the remaining German units' officers shouting. Men scrambling for cover, tanks abandoned roadside like dead animals. Rommel rides in a staff car behind the shattered remnants of Panzergruppe West. The road ahead is a graveyard. Tigers, Panthers, and Mark IVs sit idle. Doors open, hatches up, smoke curling from empty fuel lines. Crews slump against the hulls, exhausted, defeated, resigned. Even Rommel's face, usually hard as the armor he commands, shows a rare flicker of despair. By starving the frontline panzers, the Führer has created a situation no field marshal. A lieutenant points to the horizon, voice trembling. Sir, the Americans, they've broken through Mortagne. Patton's forces are heading for the Loire. Nothing left between them and central France. Rommel doesn't respond immediately. He lets the car roll past yet another abandoned Tiger. Its turret jagged from shell fire, its tracks frozen in mud. He runs his hand along the hood, feeling the cold metal, imagining the mechanical fury that once made these machines the pride of the Wehrmacht. Now, they are monuments to negligence, symbols of a fatal miscalculation. We're witnessing history, he finally says, voice low. Not just a defeat, a collapse. Weeks, maybe less, and the Western Front will vanish. Outside, the first of Patton's Sherman tanks thunder into view. Their engines roar across the fields. Soldiers climb atop their armored beasts, waving to comrades, confident, unstoppable. You can almost smell the heat from the barrels, the scent of victory carried on the morning wind. Every mile they advance, every town they seize is another wound in the heart of the Wehrmacht. Rommel's car turns off onto a side road where infantry units are attempting a last-ditch defensive line. Men dig foxholes frantically, but morale is gone. Every soldier knows what happened to the Panzers. Without armor, they are prey. Rommel watches as a Panther sits abandoned in a field, a single crewman clinging to the side. The tank could have crushed the advancing Shermans, but it is a corpse. He stops at a crossroads. Local French civilians watch silently, faces pale, children clinging to mothers. They sense the chaos, the end of German control, and whisper among themselves. Rommel steps out, boots sinking slightly into the soft ground, and surveys the destruction. The Allied push has become more than a battle. It is a flood, washing away everything in its path, leaving only ruin in its wake. An aide approaches, frantic. Herr Feldmarschall, more reports fuel reserves for the southern divisions have been intercepted. They're empty. Patton's advance will meet virtually no resistance. Rommel closes his eyes, taking a long, steady breath. He has warned Berlin repeatedly. He has pleaded, telegraphed, argued. Yet Hitler's fixation on distant rockets, on theoretical miracle weapons, has stripped the German army of its lifeblood. Fuel, the simple, essential element of modern war, was diverted while France burned. The aide hesitates, then swallows. Sir, if we do not act, Rommel cuts him off. We cannot act. The words hang like smoke in the early morning. The truth is unavoidable. They are powerless against the tide of armored vehicles. Artillery and infantry pouring across Normandy. He turns his gaze west, where the sun begins to burn through the mist. Fields that were once strong points for Fortress Europe are empty, wrecked, crawling with abandoned vehicles. The realization hits every officer in the car. They are witnessing the end of a front of a campaign that was supposed to showcase Germany's might. Rommel drives on silently. Every mile is a procession of destruction, fuel-depleted tanks on roadsides, artillery pieces abandoned in ditches, motorized infantry halted mid-advance. Logistical catastrophe is total. Every vehicle stopped, every engine silent, every soldier stranded is a symbol of a decision made thousands of miles away in a bunker. A choice that prioritized rockets over armored mobility. Hours pass. By midday, Patton's spearhead crosses the Avranches Gap. The German army cannot regroup. Rommel receives word that bridges further south are intact. Untouched by retreating forces, another layer of irony. Another missed opportunity turned into an open road for the Allies. Rommel's jaw tightens. His mind races, not with hope, but calculation. How do you delay a flood with a single bucket? Every field marshal in the world would face the same answer. The Western Front, meticulously built and touted as impregnable, is crumbling because its hardest mobility was starved. He glances at a nearby Tiger, blackened and empty, turret pointing toward the morning sky. Its crew has long since fled, leaving behind their pride and their machine. Rommel whispers under his breath, all the warnings, all the preparations, wasted. The roar of Allied engines grows louder. You can almost feel the heat of tanks advancing across the fields, the metallic resonance of tracks grinding over cobblestones and soil. German soldiers are scattering. Officers are shouting for coordination that cannot exist. Every day of delay that Hitler insisted upon has transformed into minutes of catastrophe. By evening, Rommel receives the first intelligence confirming what he feared. Patton is racing across Brittany, capturing fuel dumps, cutting off German retreat routes, and advancing toward Paris. Entire divisions are stranded. Units meant to defend Normandy are no longer capable of movement. Every tank abandoned roadside is another opening for the Allies. Another victory snatched without a single firefight. Rommel leans back in his staff car, sweat beads on his brow. He can almost see the strategic map in his mind, blue arrows carving into German positions like knives. The Western Front is collapsing not from brilliant maneuvering, not from overwhelming force, but from a lack of fuel, mismanaged by a Führer obsessed with impossible weapons. He exhales slowly, the tension finally giving way to grim resignation. The war, as he knew it, had changed forever. Germany's armored spear, the tool that should have stopped Patton in his tracks, had been rendered impotent. And all it took was a single decision in a bunker far away. Divert fuel, chase a dream, ignore reality. Rommel closes his eyes, listening to the distant hum of advancing Shermans. The smell of smoke, oil, and dust fills the car. For the first time in months, he allows himself to imagine the inevitable. Allied tanks rolling across France, racing toward Paris. While German armor lies dead in the fields, engines silent, crews scattered. The Western Front is not just under threat, it is being devoured. And Hitler has sealed the fate of France and perhaps of Germany itself.